somewhere unseen. It got a little longer, so it seems.
G'day guys and welcome to episode 44 of the Bradley J. Dryborough Experience. It's your host, the pilot, the man behind the mic, Brad as always. And today I'm here with a very exciting guest. But just quickly before I announce today's guest and introduce him, I want to remind you all about 42 for CF, the massive event that we're running here in Wollongong at the end of the year. It is massive. It's a marathon effort because it is a marathon event for Cystic Fibrosis Australia. And I'm sure you've seen over socials or heard about it on the podcast by now, but it's all about spreading a message to the cystic fibrosis community that no matter what challenges or hurdles you face in life, you can overcome them with a great attitude and a good work ethic. So we're out here hustling, learning to run and grinding away to make sure that by December 12th, I can run a marathon and spread that message and I guess be an image of hope for the community. But enough about that. You know where to support that. Follow that hashtag on socials and dive into the donation page, which will be in the show description. If you feel like you'd like to give some money or if you're in a position to, we greatly appreciate it. But enough about that and on to today's guest. He is, like I said, a very exciting name, a big figure within the sporting world. He's done so much and had such a promising career in his many, I guess, what is it now? Probably 10 years since you've been playing professionally now.
Yeah, it's with a slight holiday in the middle, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly, which we'll talk about. But ladies and gentlemen, it's the Melbourne Storm winger and footy superstar, Sandor Earl. How are you, brother?
Good, mate. Thank you. Lovely intro. Appreciate it.
Mate, not a problem at all. You deserve an intro. It's very exciting to see everything that you're doing, and we're sitting here at the moment on Zoom. If you're watching, you'd be able to see that. If you're listening, Shandor's in the sunny coast at the moment within that little NRL bubble they've got going on. And I love hosting love hosting another podcast host because he's got all the gear set up. I know the audio is going to be clean and you can see that he's still hustling even though he isn't home. So talk to me, man. How's life at the moment?
Yeah, not too bad. As you said, on the grind here. This is actually a hotel room. We've converted it to God knows what, a warehouse, podcast studio and the rest. But, mate, it's pretty good. We had it really good when we first got up here. I was telling you that I thought we all thought we were only going to be away for a couple of weeks, to be honest. Sydney was the first pit stop. And, we come up here and it was really good. You know, people have been really good to us. We're allowed to sort of roam free to a certain extent. And then probably about a month ago, we went into full lockdown to the resort. But considering everything everyone's going through in Victoria and literally sun shining every day, it's a nice big resort. Boys are getting around each other and we've got a lot of purpose. You know, we got footy on every day. I got some stuff going on off the field. So it's not too bad all in all. And, also winning helps, I guess. So, yeah, that's where we're at.
The boys look good this year.
Yeah, they do look good, mate. I think I was having a conversation the other day with some of the boys, and it's like, it's a pretty crazy experience to be in a club where like the standard is to get to the grand final every year. You know what I mean? It's a failure if you don't. So that's a pretty weird thing to be a part of in the club. But mate, it's a great club, and boys look really good. We got a great squad full of depth, and we're sitting pretty at the moment. So a couple of rounds to go before the finals, and then it gets serious.
Mate, I'm a big Chook supporter, so every year I'm eager to see how Melbourne looks heading into those finals. I'm like starting to get a little bit nervous, man, because he's just looking good. So
yeah, it's all about who can control their list at the moment. I reckon, like we've
100%.
Storm and Roosters have both copped a pretty big hit. You look at Penrith, who are coming first; they're doing really well with their injuries. So if they can keep that going, they've done a good job. But yeah, I guess Roosters always. Looking from the outside in, we're always quite curious about the different things they do. I reckon they do things slightly different to us, but they always time it right for the final. So that's when you'll see them peak.
You know what, man? I think the perspective that you shared just before about the situation that everyone within the NRL is in at the moment, especially you boys, the players, being away from home, being a little bit outside of your comfort zone, I guess, is a little bit, I guess, of an undertone to what this whole episode is going to be about. And for me, this podcast has really transitioned towards the overcoming of the odds, those personal journeys and inspiring stories where resilience is shown and that need and want to be better as a person and to grow from the experiences we have. I guess this is a really good test in the current circumstances for everyone that's playing within the NRL and coaching too, to be away from family and to be inside a bubble where you're outside of your comfort zone and you really have to show up and be better for it. And I think a lot of the boys that are out there on the paddock have shown some real resilience. And I think we're seeing some superstars that have been born from maybe, some strong mental grit during this time. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I agree. I think no doubt this time period will shape a lot of the boys, like you said, and an experience like this, you grow from it. Not only do you, you get a sense of building resilience, but I think it's character building as well. You sort of get to find out who you really are, and some things are tougher for some people than others. You got a young core group of players here who can't play any football, who are just ticking away at their trade and trying to do the best they can off contract. Not a clear picture. So there's some tough challenges there. And then you've got guys with families who are also doing it tough, and just the whole moving experience in itself. But yeah, it's just one of those things we'll look back on. And you couldn't have written it. You would never ever think that it would happen. You never think that we'd be living in a bubble, chartering flights to play in Sydney, coming back at 2 a.m. And that's the new norm. You know what I mean? So it's a pretty weird thing all in all. But as you said, I think from the get-go, I definitely seen it that way. And I think that's the perception here at the Storm. It's just an opportunity. You know what I mean? There's so many things you can do, whether it's to better yourself on or off the field, or, continue to grow friendships and relationships around the club. So there's plenty of positives have come through it, but yeah, bloody hell, it's been a pretty weird time for everyone.
Definitely. Look, I think most of the listeners here today will know who you are and know part of your story. I think there are going to be some, though, that are sitting here, see the headline of, another inspiring story and want to know a little bit of your background. So can you give us a little bit of a brief on your career as such, where it all began and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, so rugby league was probably my first love, first sport. I think I started playing when I was 3-4 years old, so got into it at a young age. Mum was actually my first coach, so I think she loves rugby league more than I do. She's a big fan, and she was a single mum. Loved her sons. I got a little brother, and always sort of pushed them, or had this big self-belief that she drove into us that we could be or do anything. She was a hard taskmaster, but in a good way. I think she sort of doubled as a dad for me as well. But that work ethic that I sort of have built my career on, realistically, I'd say more so than talent, was definitely instilled by her now looking back in hindsight. So yeah, got into footy, played every sport I could possibly play. And then you get to around the mark of 14, 15, you kind of have to make a decision if you want to get serious with it. And a few things had led me to a path to show me that, yeah, I could probably play rugby league and try and chase it as something bigger. So went through all the grades, and probably the first big experience, it was a changing moment for me, was I did my ACL when I was 17 years old at school.
Yep.
And at the time, doesn't have as much weight or significance as it does now, because I didn't really, it wasn't really an issue. I didn't have any contracts. I didn't know what an injury was. I didn't know what I was looking at, but that sort of set me up. And I had a year off school that year. I was still a winger, but I was probably, 68, 69 kilos, ringing wet, real skinny, tall. And mum sent me off to the gym after I had my surgery. She got me the best surgeon, to her credit. We got a bit of financial assistance there. And then I basically, went to the gym every day. She got me a dietitian. And that next year I came back ready for my first the first serious step, which at around 18, which is SG ball. And then I came back at 83 kilos and was just a completely different player. And that time period, yeah, it's probably the story, or my journey, is a real roller coaster, and it's pretty evident as you start to peel away the layers. But that was my first experience of a major adversity, although quite naive at that age to what it all entailed, but then followed by one of the best experiences that I could have had. So something so negative, but then sort of owned by my own perseverance, hard work, and positivity, drove something towards a positive outcome. And that has really been a recurring theme. If I look back now, I sort of have this, although it's hard when you go through things, I sort of have this understanding and belief that everything's going to be all right, because I've gone through such shitty things before, and always it's been followed up by something great. And I don't know what you put that down to, but I'd like to think that if you go through something like that, you don't let it own you. You're positive. You get through it. You almost set yourself up for the next stage. And I think that recurring theme that I've sort of taken on has been the reason why I've been able to have positive experiences after. So yeah, cracked on, worked my way into some really cool school footy, played at Matcherville Sports High with a heap of first grade boys that are there now, and got into the Roosters. I was playing under 20s, debuted when I was 19 as a teenager. So that was a pretty cool experience. Freddie Fiddler was my coach then, and he was like my idol growing up. So those are moments.
That's who I was named after. I know exactly, man. He was my guy.
He was the GOAT. So for him to, that's that one moment that you'll never forget. Just for him to give me my debut at the club that I'd always supported was really cool. And then from there, mate, it's been like I said, a bit of a roller coaster. Was let go there. Got into a bit of dramas at a nightclub, although it didn't really eventuate to anything. As you mentioned, the media and the headlines can portray a pretty strong story, and that's how people, decide the outcomes or what they want to think about you. So I got through that, but wasn't offered a contract. Went over to Penrith, and again, I was sort of just training by myself all preseason up until January, and Freddie actually got me a meeting with Matty Elliott, who was the coach of the Panthers, and I went in there and. He just, there's this one moment that I talk about. He went in there. He was pretty blunt. He was a pretty cool guy, though. And I never thought I'd be in this position. I just played first grade when I was 18, 19, and I was thinking, should be sweet. But ended up doing the whole preseason by myself, rocked up, and he had this whiteboard, which is pretty typical in a coach's office, and it had about 10 or 11 names. They were all outside backs. And he said, you're at the bottom of this list. If you want to play first grade here, you just need to pay better than these players. And I just remember that moment really vividly, and I was like, sweet. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So went back to reserve grade. They were called Windsor Wolves at the time. My first couple of training sessions was out at in a paddock. It wasn't even a footy field. And I was like, far out. This is so different. Like I was living in the eastern suburbs of Manly and that. And now I'm out in, the back of Penrith, just training. Yeah. But that's just where it was. But I think the thing I held on to was, I just had that self-belief that I knew that I had more in me, and that really just hold on to what he said. I'm just going to go out there and play better than everyone else that's there. And then a couple of weeks into the reserve grade comp, got a contract. And then halfway through the year, I was playing first grade and ended up making a run to the finals. And that was really followed by a lot of injuries. Went through a big injury period, had double shoulder reconstruction, which led to, some of the issues I ran into with the peptides and things like that. Sort of lost face at Penrith, new coach, wasn't able to make my mark or leave an impression, and then went to Canberra. And again, one of the darkest moments to one of the positive moments, ended up playing the best footy of my life. Loved my time there, and then led me to my suspension. So that's it in a bit of a nutshell. But as I said, It's been a roller coaster, but it'd be hard to take it back. It's, at the end of the day, I sit down, and the older I get, the wiser you get, the more time you have to think. And I'm just grateful that I've got to, rugby league. In those 4 years I had off, I'd sort of traveled the world and met a lot of different people. Rugby league's a tiny dot in the, in the grand scheme of things. But for me, it was a life goal you set out. It's something that you're passionate about. I've put in God knows how many hours, and to achieve that dream and play football as a career, that's really what you got to focus on. You look back and you just got to be grateful that you had that opportunity.
Definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit earlier there. You mentioned how those lowest of lows always are followed by a high if you can persevere and push through. And I think, I was speaking about this a fair bit the last week with a couple of mates, and how I think, we all face challenges in life. And I think if you aren't facing challenges in life, maybe you're not pushing hard enough. Maybe you're not actually getting the best out of yourself, because I think for anyone to grow and to succeed and have the things they want in life, they have to come across those hurdles. And quite often the people that don't, and the people that just sort of plotter along in life and are okay with the mediocrity of what they're doing, they kind of crumble under those losses, don't they? There's I think a real fine line between being able to handle them and being able to come out the other side. And you've done an amazing job of that. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today, because I think whilst your lesson is quite different, it's within the athletic field, but it is really just a life lesson. And it's about showing resilience and knowing yourself and being able to learn and grow from those moments. And you mentioned it there where, it led to that first part of your career led to that 4-year suspension. So it was in 2011 that you started to seek for help to fix those shoulders, right?
Yeah, so Stephen Dank was the sports scientist, wrapped up in this whole saga, and he was working at the Sharks and another AFL club. So when he came over to us, he was doing some stuff with altitude training and some blood work. So it was all pretty normal. That was for, a couple of months, and we knew what he was doing at the Sharks. So to be honest, it was all pretty credible.
As it would be, like to have anyone who is qualified like that to come into a professional sporting club, you're pretty confident that they're doing things right.
Yeah, and it's not something that I seeked, outside of those four walls. So, it's so easy to look back and go, could have done this, should have done this, should have known that. But at the end of the day, a staff member comes into the club, regardless of the intentions, you could pretty confidently say there's full trust there. You know what I mean? So went through that period, got injured. That down the line, I was there at training one day, and the people employed at the club who were also in the sports science department said, "Oh, you should speak to Dank. He's done some work at other clubs with injuries. He might be able to help you out." And then basically had a meeting with him. He took me through everything. Again, the hot word peptide, which people aren't sort of as fussed on, I would say, anymore because of the knowledge and understanding of it. But at the time, it meant nothing. Do you know what I mean? A peptide literally meant nothing to me. And to be honest, although I have quite strong understanding and knowledge and education of sports science training and nutrition, not as opposed to some of the other rugby league players, I just had a strong interest in it. So some of the explanations of amino acids and all that sort of stuff made sense to me. And if there was ever any doubt, which maybe I had, because at the end of the day, we were talking about an injection. Not that that's too foreign to me in that space with the injuries I've had. But at the end of the day, if I was ever worried, I made the right calls and I went and checked it on the ASADA website, which nothing showed up. And then the other big factors are the fact that, just to paint a picture, I went to an external doctor outside of the club. Now, that's probably the one thing that I look back and, the comments are I was a little bit naive, but I guess the perception at the time was around a club doctor was that, even though Stephen Dank was at the club and he was pushing the boundaries with the altitude training and the blood work, if he was to do this, would the club doctors be as on side? Now, that wasn't portrayed in like an illegal substance way. That question was asked 10 times over. There's no way I'm going to risk some small sort of gain for my shoulders to potentially get banned. It's just stupid. No way I would do that. So that's kind of the area where I was like, oh yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. And if you use this external doctor at other clubs, then that's fine. I went to a legit medical clinic with other people around. There was nothing to hide. So
can I interject there quickly?
Yeah, of course.
And it's one thing so I've got cystic fibrosis, so I see doctors galore, right? And I can 100% attest to what you're saying there, where there's always the one doctor where as the person who's trying to get better and feel better and trying to explore new territory to make sure that you're coming out the other side a healthier human, there's always that one doctor that's a little bit more traditional or a little bit, so it's normal to want to seek new opinions and new approaches. So when I heard you say that, because I listened to you explain this in your first episode of your podcast, and I was like, to me, that's completely normal. Like I would feel like if you just sat there and listened to one doctor just because he's the doctor at your club, you're kind of not doing your job as the athlete. You know what I mean? So
100%. And then the public perception, that gained a heap of traction when everything came out. They only make their opinions off the media. So I hold no begrudges to that. And obviously that's come full circle. But, at the time it was portrayed to be something completely different. You know what I mean? So as I said, that what you just said, you did nail it on the head. And traditionally that is the, that's the direction that most club doctors take. And again, this is not something I would have gone into or even looked at if I had thought it was illegal at all. A couple of things, back that up further down the track. I remember thinking there was this one time And although this was brought out in my case that I did test it with asada, apparently that means nothing. Remembering this wasn't a banned substance, so that's also another grey area. It wasn't actually a banned substance at the time, so that's another weird one. The whole thing's pretty weird, to be honest. But I remember this one time I got tested probably like 3 months later, blood tested, everything, and I was like, you know what? If there was ever this shadow of doubt in my head that I've done something wrong, this is going to be the shining light. You know what I mean? And of course, nothing happened. And of course, the 10 tests after that, nothing ever came up over the next 2-year period. So, I mean, I don't know what I was expected to think or do. At the end of the day, the reason I got suspended was all through text messages. Those text messages led to the admission of me being injected, whether it was or not, I don't know, with thymosin and CJC. And those things were, they were explained to be growth hormone enhancers. So although those substances weren't banned, they were found to enhance growth hormone. So that's what came out 2 years later through text messages, which is another sort of crazy story about how all that happened. And then eventually, obviously, through taking one of those peptides from A to B to get to the doctor, and amongst all of that, I was deemed to have been trafficking, which led to the 4-year ban, which is, still a hard pill to swallow and get my head around.
Yeah. Can I be honest? That shit me when I read that, because I remember reading, as I was researching for this and doing a bit of research, I was reading that and I'm like, it makes it sound terrible. It's just like we said again, that media thing, which is like, you're right, trafficking, and you're used to hearing that when some guys smuggled in, 1,000 kgs of cocaine from South America, and it makes you look similar, and it's the complete opposite. It's frustrating, isn't it? Like I'm frustrated reading it, let alone being you.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, the whole thing, I don't know. There was bigger things at play, probably bigger agendas at play, and I can look back on that and understand and accept that. And it was all pretty new. It doesn't make it right, or at the end of the day, it's still that thing that I'll look back on. It's a time period in my life where I was having the best time of my life playing footy, and everything should have been going my way, but that was taken away. And I'll accept responsibility for getting into that situation. I don't really hold too much angst, because if I'm honest, and you would have heard me say this before, that time period away from the game set me up for who I am today, the man I am, the lessons I've taken, the growth I've had as a person, the experiences I've had. Really, that opportunity shaped me, because at the end of the day, rugby league is a bubble. You know what I mean? It's all encompassing. Yeah. There's a lot of sacrifice involved, and that's nothing against, a lot of my teammates. They're just at this stage in their life, they just haven't experienced the things I've had. And, you can look at that many different ways. They've had experiences that I don't have, but at the same time, the opportunity to break out of that bubble, meet a whole heap of new people that I would never really communicate with, talk with, going to places that I would never have the opportunity to go to, traveling, which I think, is a life-changing experience that everyone should take on as early as possible. But all those things have set me up for who I am today. So it is really hard to look back in regret, because there's plenty of things that I did in that time that have set me up for now that I can focus on.
I love hearing that, man, because that was one of my questions for you today was, I think you just answered it perfectly. Was there any resentment towards the NRL, to Stephen Dank, to any of those people? Because, as hard as it would be, and I give you full credit, because you really were, dealt a pretty shit hand with the way that all of that unfolded. But to walk away from it, put it behind you, and like you said, get the best out of that 4 years outside of footy, mate, it's a massive credit to you, because that resentment and that negativity that a lot of people would hold in your situation only wears away at you, only deflates you as a person, right?
That's the thing, man. I have this conversation all the time, and it's not fake. It's not an effort for me. I just have, and whether I probably built this from a young age, sort of fending for myself to some degree and going through different things, but I just look at it and like, it really is a black and white choice. Like, are you going to just stew on this, let it own you, whether it controls your emotions, bring you into depression, all the rest of it, like, or are you just going to spin it, move on, find something else to focus on, find a way to put some positive perspective on it and just crack on? Because like that's really the choice you're dealt. And if you were to give if you were put it down into a blue pill, red pill situation, there's only one choice you're going to take every time. So
Definitely.
don't get me wrong. When shitty things like that happen, there's emotions involved and it sucks. Initially the rip the Band-Aid moment, it sucks. And everyone should go through that. Don't deny that, because there's some healing that needs to be done there. But after that, mate, you just got to, you've got no choice but to get on with it. Like it's just
100%.
really that simple. And that comes on the back of, like, I think as a little plan, you do need to have some preparation. You do need to have some foresight, and it's be like, all right, what's next for me? What can I focus on? What are some goals? What can I sink my teeth into? Like, that's important. So I think that's the follow-on process. But yeah, for me, it's always just been a really simple decision, because it's like, sit on it, let it own me, or move on. And, pretty quickly you can leave it behind. So that's the way I look
at the hand you dealt. Hey.
Exactly. And it seems really simple when it's put like that, but I kind of feel like it is.
Definitely. Hey, how important was Thailand for you? Because that was your way to get away from it all and just refresh and have opportunity to sit back, reflect, and obviously start to plan what life was going to be like moving forward.
Yeah, it was massive. I've been over there before with a few of the footy boys, and it was just this like really cool place. It was a lot different to what it is now. It's just sort of this place where you go for these like training holidays for weeks, months on end, and just this one part of Thailand in Phuket, and it was really cool. I went over there, not a care in the world. No one gives a shit about rugby league there or me or anything else that I'd done. So I went over there initially just to get away. Two parts to that. It was probably the best thing I could have done for my own mental health and, the whole experience, but also being out of sight, out of mind. If I was ever going to put up a bit of a fight, probably wasn't the best, but I think the option that I took, for myself outweighed me just staying there and trying to, do whatever or navigate around it. So went over there. And yeah, as I said, instantly was able to train. I was eating good food. I was living on an island, riding around in a scooter, going on the beach every day. So there was no better place to be. Yeah, exactly. And then, like I said, I'd always had a bit of a mindset outside of footy. Wanted to do more. Wanted to explore I knew there was opportunities, and sort of had this idea for a bit of a cafe food concept that I had back home. And then I was literally at the front of the hotel, and there was a space for rent. It was about a 60 square meter shop front on the main strip. And there was a guy staying there long term. And I was like, man, I've got this idea. Do you want to do it? And of course, I've opened a business now in Australia. There's a zero red tape, and it's about 1/10 of the cost to open something. But before you know it, I had a cafe opened up by December that year, and it was just, again, you want to talk about finding something to give you some purpose. It sort of filled the void of competitiveness, my first business experience. And it was the same feeling I have playing sport. It was a thrill. There was so much work, routine, scheduling that needed to be involved. And I just had a passion for it and that sort of customer service aspect. So did that, coupled with coming home and doing the Channel 9 interview, which was pretty massive for me. We talk about changing public perception. It sort of humanized the whole thing. I was able to actually speak, and it ended up being quite a good end to that year and a positive step forward for me.
And then F45 come about, and mate, does that explain the rig? Is that how you get the rig so tidy?
I don't know if I can give all the credit to F45, but it's something I've always been pretty keen on. As I said, I think it started from that young age when I was ripping in at the gym. Now, I think I sort of built my own persona as an athlete on that, trying to have a physical presence, but also probably kept that vanity. Always wanted to look good since then. So I've always been in and around it. But yeah, in Thailand, it was pretty cool. Like, ended up opening a gym directly across the road. Was involved in the opening of one of the biggest gyms that is there, and then opened a second cafe, all in the space of about 3.5 years. And they were doing really well. Sold them all. Put all that money into the F45 in Melbourne, and just timed out perfectly, because as we were coming back to that time period, with a year down the line before my suspension, I was like, I always wanted to play football. People always asked me that, and it was always something that I wanted to come back and do. 4 years is a hell of a long time, but I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. I had unfinished business. I wanted to go out on my own terms, and Melbourne was the one. There was a plane ride back from Australia to Thailand. I read Craig Bellamy's book, actually, but I sort of had my mind made up. But that was a pretty interesting experience. And then I was just like, I said to my manager, if I ever want to see how good I can be, or have one last crack, Melbourne's a place I want to go, so I'm going to try for that. And then sort of just put all my mind into Melbourne. Everything was Melbourne, and then landed the F45 there, and then eventually landed a contract through the Storm. So it was pretty crazy how it worked out.
Mate, you know what? I think when I read the story and I seen you coming back to Melbourne, it was like, for me, Craig Bellamy is one of those guys. I think he's one of, 2 or 3 coaches in the NRL that are not just big on excellence, but are big on integrity. And they want to make sure that their group is a group that are going to work well together and have the right intentions and the right outlook on life. And mate, to see Bellyache back you after 4 and a bit years away from the game, and the way that he spoke about, the way you reached out and the credibility that had, I think spoke volumes for you as a person as well. So I congratulate you, mate, because it's bloody hard to come back from 4 and a bit years off professional sport and go back to playing at the top level. So, mate, your success from here on out is very well deserved. That's for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, you're right. Belzer is he's definitely a unique character, especially amongst the game. Like the things that when you talk about the way they recruit, a lot of it is based on the integrity and the character of a person. And sometimes I often think, you get these new guys in, and I'm like, I wonder if this is going to ring true again. And time after time, it's just good blokes here. Like you can't. I know they used to speak about this no dickhead policy. Like if you're not. This one example I used to give about other clubs, like, so if I use myself as an example, I was someone who like really focused on the little things like work ethic, trying to do everything right. You know what I mean? And I was probably the odd one out in the rest of those clubs. Whereas now, if you're not doing that, you're the odd one out of this club. So that sort of, paints the picture. But yeah, time after time, that really is a huge factor. They recruit, heavily biased on what type of person you are, just knowing that those type of people are going to fit into the system in the club here. So it's pretty special. And yeah, that time with Craig Bellamy, I met up with him after sending him a letter detailing him, exactly what my intentions are and what I believed I could do. And first time I met him in a cafe, spoke for about 20 minutes about stuff. And then he's like, mate, I'm in, let's do it. I've spoken to the powers that be, and I want to give you a chance. So I was like blown away. I just thought I was going to meet him, and like, who knows, maybe something will eventuate in 3-6 months. So yeah, to put that faith in me, it sort of set me up for a whole year of like literally training by myself. So mate, that was phenomenal. And there's been plenty of other times that Craig's, shown that sort of, I suppose, support and faith in me, time and time again. So yeah, he's a champion bloke, and that's why he's a leader of this great club for like, I don't know how many years, 20 years or whatever it is.
Yeah. Hey, talk to me about the anchors within your life. You seem like a pretty mindful guy, and you seem like you've got some form of routine or some form of elements to your day that allow you to consistently be on top and have that high energy and that high output. Is there anything that is a consistency within your day to day?
You know what? I'm trying to track myself now. It's probably not the best example, but with all the chaos that's going on. But for me, I don't know, man. To be honest, my daily routine isn't as amazing as I'd love it to be. But I sometimes think is it my downfall. I juggle a lot of things, but I don't. The biggest thing for me is the chaos of it all doesn't really stress me. I almost like. It's like I need the chaos in my life.
You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, I sort of embrace it. So if you think about now, like I've got the gym back home, which is, sort of going through a tough period. We started a business with a couple of the boys called 4 Point Collectibles, which has gone mad. It's based around the sports card business. And then obviously I've got a football career, which is first and foremost. And the big thing about that is it's the physical taxing on your body. So it's not only the focus that you need to try and improve and try and be a good footy player, but it's also the toll it takes physically on your body. But for me, it's preparation. I'm just trying to always do the best that I can. So it's when I wake up, I'm making sure that I'm eating healthy all the time. And it's just consistently, these actions are consistently happening. I started the carnivore diet about 4 weeks ago, and so
at the moment, heaps of people
it is.
that, right?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. I've got some assistance through a guy called Dominic Rapson, who works out of Origins Nutrition in Bali, which so I've had some guidance with it. It's not just I just start eating steaks and bacon, you know what I mean? So I've had some guidance, but just disciplined. Like I'm just all into what I do, you know. So if that's my my schedule tomorrow is going to be footy, I'll have my food prepared. I'll make sure I go through the things that I need to do the night before, whether that's my stretching, mobility. I'll make sure that I'm focused for the next day, and whether that entails the food that I eat before and after training, or even something as simple as, making myself a bulletproof coffee. I think for me, it's just consistency and making sure that I'm constantly giving myself the best opportunity to perform. So preparation is key for me, and just hustling. Like I'm always running around like a madman. If I'm chasing a new opportunity, I want to get this done. I want to get that done. So yeah, I think between being consistently prepared for the next opportunity or the next day, and just embracing the hustle, that's my favorite part. When my back's up against the wall and you're grinding for new opportunities, or you're trying to start something, like that's my favorite part. So if you can embrace that and couple that with a consistent attitude to your preparation and your goals and exactly what you want to do, lacking the minor details there, but that's probably the summary
I
of
like that.
what I would focus on, I reckon.
I like that. I want to leave off on two things. The first thing is, you've obviously done so much already. And like you said, you run around like a madman all the time to juggle everything. But is there anything in your life, and not just business or footy, that you haven't been able to do yet that you want to do and that you can see in the future? And then also I want to leave off on a bit of advice for the listeners, just life advice, mate, a bit of wisdom.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I'm in a bit of a transition period. I was speaking to who was I chatting to the other day? A mate of mine, Tim Hanley, who's doing a podcast as well. Yeah, and I was chatting to him, and it's a weird transition in life for me now. Like, not saying that footy's coming to an end or what I want to do, but I've always, there's so much that I want to do. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I look at the choices I've made, and as I said, footy is all encompassing. It takes a lot of sacrifice. And then, although I'm having a lot of fun with my sports card business and the gym and things like that, I constantly had this internal battle of like, where could I be? I could be anywhere in the world. What could I be doing? I could be doing anything I want to do, So I sometimes have that like strong internal battle of like, what do I want to do? What am I missing out on? So being open and honest about that, I do struggle with kind of being in the now a little bit.
Yeah.
And just focusing on what you do have, or tomorrow at the very worst. Like, what are you doing tomorrow, or what are you doing today, and how can you do that really well? So I'm at a bit of a crossroads where I'm like, I feel like I'm under pressure where I don't want to waste any time, and there's so many things I want to do. So I'm trying to navigate my way through that. But that probably leads into the what did I answer the first question? I don't know if I did.
It sounds like I think I could potentially answer it for you. It sounds like you want to explore a bit.
Yeah, I do, but I'm almost at the point where I was like, I want to pull the trigger on something epic. I just want to and it's those experiences that I've had up until date where I have traveled and I have been successful in a few little things you do, and you're like, what could I be doing? What, that what if? But it's a blessing and a curse, because I feel like that mindset can take you to great things and provide great opportunities. But at the same time, you struggle to narrow your focus and just focus on now. You know what I mean? So I guess
spin off on that quickly.
Yes.
Do you think footy is what you'll be known for in the end? Like, do you think when people say the name Sandor Earl in 30 years, 40 years, do you think they will think about Sandor Earl, the footy player, or do you think it'll be something else?
Yeah, I think it'll be something else for sure. I think
That's
it'll be something else.
That's exciting to hear.
Yeah, it is. And like, it's not like I've had a very colorful career. It's been pretty crazy. I would have liked things to have changed a little bit. And I speak to people at the end of the day, like, I've been doing this for 27 years of my life. I've been playing football, and, for 12 of that professionally. Like, I have to look back and go, I decided to spend all that time on rugby league. You know what I mean? So, and not that I regret that, but you look back and you're like, that's a lot. So it's almost like you look at this next phase that is coming up, and it's like, how do I attack it? How do I make sure I make the absolute most of it? So I don't know how that's going to pan out. But as you said, it's very exciting. And to leave you with the wisdom part, I think we touched on it before, and it's probably the biggest thing and the easiest takeaway is that you spoke about embracing challenges. And I think to go one step further, you need to just improve your relationship with failure, because I think the perception around failure, and whether that's who that's been driven by, whether that's our parents, our upbringing, media, teachers, I don't know, but the perception around failure is almost completely wrong. It's inevitable. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fail. But if you can embrace those moments and understand the flow-on effect is learning, there's no doubt that you're going to chase some sort of knowledge or education around how you can improve it. And ultimately, the end result is the initial thing that you failed at or you made a mistake with, you've now overcome, or you've picked up that skill, or you've moved forward in some sort of way. So I feel like embrace challenges, embrace failure. And for some people that's daunting. Why would I want to put myself in a position where I could get hurt or be embarrassed or anything like that? But if you understand the flow-on effect from failure, making mistakes, whatever you want to call it, then you'll soon realize that the more of those experiences I can have, the better I'll be as a person, the smarter I'll be, whatever it is. So just try and improve that relationship with failure, and I feel like it will do wonders for your life.
Definitely. I think embrace failure, let the fire fuel you, as you would say, and just move forward and chase life. That's definitely the lesson out of this, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I think, like I said, mate, it's, I'm not just saying it because we're sitting face to face, but I think your story holds a lot of power. And I think your story is what most people will experience in life in just a far more extreme manner, where you said those highs and lows and that roller coaster that we all have to ride that is called life. So a massive credit to you for coming out the other side and just chasing life and being so excited about the future. It's good to see.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate it. It's been good coming on. I appreciate it.